Hello English 151, this is Alex, and I am recording my first lecture that is going to go on YouTube. So welcome to, I don't know, my house, I guess. And we're going to start with the proofreading and revisions lecture. So why are we doing revisions and proofreading? So the main reason that I want you guys to be able to do this is because I want you to be able to take your work that you've already done and make it better. Because when you first start writing your essay, you're just doing it as fast as possible, trying to get the ideas down. So what you're really doing is taking a big chunk of wood that you've started carving out and actually adding all the details into it to make it better. So what do I want you guys to be able to do by the end of this lecture? So one of the things that I want you to be able to do is to distinguish between revision and proofreading. There is a difference. So when you're doing revision and proofreading, I want you to be able to know the difference so that you can tell which one you're doing. Another thing that I wanted you to be able to do is to actually make suggestions for a peer's draft. We would have been doing this in class where you switched papers and then made revisions to your peer's paper. But unfortunately, we can't do that anymore because it would have required us to be face-to-face. You can still, if you have somebody's email in our class, switch drafts and still do it, but it's not going to be for marks anymore. And then the most important thing is to be able to apply revision and proofreading to your own work. So, of course, that's the most important thing, because then you're going to improve your own work and make it better and hopefully push up your mark a little bit. So first of all, I want to talk about constructive criticism. What is constructive criticism? So if you're watching from home, take a second, pause this video to take a think about what that is. So above all, constructive criticism is meant to help somebody improve. So if you don't make your comments constructive in a way that will actually help somebody improve, then it's just criticism. So if you say something like, oh, this is good, or this is bad, that's not going to help somebody because they don't know why it's good or bad. So you have to be able to tell them why you're giving them the constructive criticism that you're giving them, because otherwise they won't know how to fix it. So if you're following along on the slides, I have a note here about whether or not you're comfortable with somebody else reading your work. So as you go through academia, you're going to have more and more people read your work. So you're starting off with people like me reading your essay. So as you go on, you're going to have more and more people reading your stuff. So if you actually go into something like grad school, you're going to have multiple people reading your stuff and critiquing it and just tearing it apart. It happened to me, and if you go into grad school, it'll happen to you too. And I know it's tough trying to get up the confidence to have multiple people read your stuff, but you need to be confident in yourself. Your work is fine, it's good, you're doing a good job. Don't worry about the constructive criticism that's going to come, because that is going to make your work even better, and that's what you want. So make sure that whenever you are sharing your work, you're just confident that this is a good process and that it's going to help you. So first of all, what is revision? So I'll tell you what revision is not. Revision is not looking at the small details yet. So things like grammar and sentence structure are not things that you should be worrying about right now. So what revision is actually looking at the overall structure of the paper. So you're looking at organization and content, and do things make sense in a logical fashion? Are there logical fallacies? That type of thing. So when you're looking at revising, you're looking at the big idea picture. So let's start with the introduction. So the introduction is the beginning of your essay and is the part that you're trying to revise in order to get my attention. So you want something that is organized well so that you can grab somebody's attention, but also introduce them to your topic and what you're going to be doing. So the first thing that you should look for is whether or not you can tell the difference between the introductory paragraphs and the body paragraphs. Can you see the difference between those two? Next, what we're going to be looking at is, can you see the rhetorical features of the introduction? So remember when we were doing the introductory lecture and I was talking about things like statement of relevance, forecasting, thesis statement, topic. Can you see those rhetorical structures in your essay or your peer's essay? Next, can you find the thesis statement? The thesis statement is the main thing that you want to be able to find. If you can't find the thesis statement, that's bad. You want to be able to have a thesis statement that is strong and effective so that you can tie everything in the essay back to that thesis statement, because that's your main argument. That's the main point of your paper. So you need to have a strong one. We already went over thesis statements earlier in the year, but if you're still having trouble with that, please email me. I will be able to help you. Step 2. This is the body or core paragraphs that you want to be able to revise. So some of the things that you might want to be able to revise are, can you find the sort of structure of each section of the body? So when you're trying to make a structure for this, you want to be able to see, oh, this is the sub-argument 1, this is sub-argument 2, this is sub-argument 3, and be able to tell the difference between them and how they're organized. Next, is there an effective method of development? So back when we were looking at core paragraphs, we were looking at what kind of essay are you writing? Are you writing a narrative essay? Are you writing a cause and effect essay? Are you writing a persuasive essay? So what kind of essay are you writing? How are you organizing it? Are you organizing it in a way that's effective and logical? Now, thinking back to your thesis statement, is everything that you've written relevant to your thesis statement? So this part is the hardest part because you're trying to tie everything back together to your thesis statement so that you have a nice essay present to give to me at the end, and that doesn't have any stray little bits hanging out. So if you find anything that doesn't support your thesis statement in some way, then you have to cut it. I'm sorry. Now you want to look at the paragraph structure. So when you're looking at the paragraph structure, you're looking at first the guiding sentence, which some of you know is the topic sentence. It's the first sentence of the paragraph. And the last sentence of the paragraph, which is, in some cases, the sentence that is going to flow into the next paragraph. So the transitional sentence. So that's what you want to be able to see if those are strong. Next, is there adequate low-level detail? So do you have enough reported speech in your essay? In other words, do you have enough evidence in order to hold up your argument? Lastly, is there a narrative coherence, and does everything tie back to your thesis statement? So this type of thing is most important because you want everything to, again, to tie back to your thesis statement, because this is what makes your organizational structure the strongest. Step 3, conclusions. So again, we had a lot of different rhetorical structures that we went over for conclusions. So things like, do you have another statement of relevance? Do you have maybe a knowledge deficit? Do you have a call to action? Things like that. So you want to be able to find those rhetorical structures in your own essay or other people's essays. Does your conclusion clearly recap the main points of your argument? Because this is your last chance to get across the main point of your essay. So when you recap the main points, you're basically paraphrasing what you said throughout the essay. So you just want to succinctly summarize your points in a way that gets across the main message so that the reader knows that this is the main point that you want to get across. So if we were in the classroom, we would be going over a peer review, and after you go over the paper, you would be taking the paper back to the person who you were peer reviewing with, and you would be discussing their essay with them. So the first thing you want to go over is the strengths and the weaknesses of that essay, and tell them how they can improve the structure, the organization, the flow of the content. At this point in the class, I would have read an essay out loud to you in order to give you a chance to figure out the structures in that essay. It's on page 295 of your textbook, but I will not be doing that on the actual video here because that would take up too much time. So what I'm going to do instead is post an essay on Moodle, and you can figure out whether or not you want to practice revise and practice edit. Last thing, so now we're going to go over editing, which is different from revising, because revising is looking at the sort of big picture stuff, and editing is looking at the sort of little nitty-gritty bits. So first of all, is the language appropriate for a university level class? So do you have complex wording? Do you have complex sentences? That type of thing. Next, do you have adequate documentation? So when you're looking at your quotations, your paraphrases, your quotations and paraphrases, are they adequately cited? Does it follow the sandwich method? Do you have like a clear introduction to the quotation itself, and do you have an explanation for that quotation? The explanation is the most important part, because you can't just have a quotation and expect it to speak for itself. Lastly, are the sentences clear and grammatically sound? So when you're trying to figure this out, the best thing to do is to read it out loud so that you can figure out which sentences sound weird, which sentences aren't clear. So that's the best way to figure that one out. So this actually is the end of our lecture on revision and editing. So I'm gonna let you guys go, but apart from that, I wanted to show you my cat, because my cat is right here, and I'm sure you all noticed that there's this like sort of orange thing in the middle of my living room. So, oh, this is Percy. Percy is my cat. He's probably really annoyed that I woke him up, but I wanted to show him to you because we need more pets and happiness in this time of pandemic. Thanks for being a good audience, students.